He thought he'd outsmart the system again. Calm, collected, a master manipulator with a perfect alibi. Wait, watch what happens when the detective slides one photo across the table. He blinked. That's when the whole story unraveled. Everyone believed his lies until one woman's voice, buried for months, came back louder than ever. Let's watch it out. The interrogation room was cold and quiet, its fluorescent light flickering faintly over the scratched metal table. Detective Evelyn Harper leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "You know her, don't you?" she asked. Across the table, Eli Warren smirked, the kind of smirk that always made people question themselves before questioning him. "Looks familiar," he said casually, leaning back in his chair. Harper slid a photo across the table, a snapshot of Monica Reyes, found dead in her apartment. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. "That's Monica Reyes," Harper said. "She didn't fight back. She didn't get the chance." Eli shrugged. "Sad," he replied. "But that's got nothing to do with me." But it had everything to do with him. He just hadn't admitted it yet. Flashback. Monica Reyes was 28, a veterinary assistant who smiled with a whole face, the kind of woman who believed in second chances and sometimes gave out thirds when she shouldn't have. That night, 4 months before the interrogation, she stood in the doorway of her own apartment, holding Eli's phone in her hand. The screen still lit up with a name she didn't recognize. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw the phone. Her anger was quieter than that, the kind that only shows up when trust has been stretched too thin for too long. With tears forming in her eyes, she asked softly but firmly, "Who is Angela? And why are you texting her at midnight?" Eli looked up from the couch without blinking. He barely flinched, like he'd rehearsed this role. "You're being paranoid again, Monica," he said flatly, like it was a diagnosis. Monica's voice cracked as she held up the phone. "I saw the messages. Don't insult me." But Eli only sighed, that cold kind of sigh meant to shame, not soothe. "You saw what you wanted to see," he said, standing up slowly. Monica stepped back, not in fear, but in disappointment. This wasn't the first time Eli flipped the script. To Monica, love meant compromise, but to Eli, love was leverage, something to bend until it broke. Her voice shook now, not with fear, but with finality. "You're gaslighting me. I'm done, Eli. We're done." Eli tilted his head, like he couldn't quite process the idea of someone walking away from him. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it carried something dark beneath it. "You really think anyone's going to care about your version of the story?" That sentence didn't just end an argument, it ended a life. Because that was the last night Monica Reyes was seen alive. Flashback. Angela Pike was 30, a freelance designer. She had met Eli Warren in a coffee shop just over 2 years before Monica. At first, he was charming, curious about her work, supportive of her goals, always saying the right thing at the right time. But charm, for men like Eli, is just a mask they slip on before the manipulation begins. What you're about to hear never aired on television. It was part of a recorded police interview submitted months after Monica Reyes had gone missing. Angela didn't want to be seen. She only wanted to be heard. The tape begins with a soft click and a long, nervous breath. Angela's voice trembles as she speaks. "He gave me that necklace right after he grabbed me," she says, her words stumbling over memory. "Said it was a misunderstanding, that I'd overreacted." The detective's voice is off mic, calm, steady. A question asked quietly. "Why didn't you report it?" Angela hesitates. Then she answers the way too many women do when they've been made to question their own reality. "He convinced me it was my fault, that I was too emotional. He always made me feel like I was losing my mind." Gaslighting. Psychological manipulation so deep it bends truth, memory, and even self-worth. In forensic psychology, it's a tactic rooted in control, not violence of the body, but of the mind. Angela's voice cracks near the end, not from fear, but shame, the kind that lingers long after the bruises fade. She didn't cry on the recording, but when the tape ends, you can hear her breathing. And in that silence, there's a weight that never left her. Back in the interrogation room, the walls hadn't changed. Still cold, still silent. But Eli was shifting. Not in his posture, not in his words, but in the stillness behind his eyes. Detective Evelyn Harper sat across from him, unshaken. She wasn't in a rush, she didn't bluff, she simply waited. And then, very slowly, reached into the folder at her side. With quiet precision, she placed a silver necklace onto the metal table between them. Its chain curled softly, like it was breathing. Angela says this belonged to her, Harper said, her voice steady. She lost it the night you assaulted her. She didn't accuse him, she just observed. That's what made it harder to dodge. Funny, she added. We found it under Monica's bed. Eli's eyes dropped to the necklace. For the first time since the interview began, he didn't have a comeback ready. There was a pause, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 3 years. And then, with a smirk that no longer fit the room, he said, feigning ignorance, I don't know what that is. Denial is a survival reflex. For some, it's fear. But for Eli, it was control. If he could hold the truth at arm's length long enough, maybe it wouldn't stick. Harper leaned forward just slightly, not aggressive, not accusatory, but certain. You were there, Eli, she said quietly. You left it behind, just like you left Monica. Eli exhaled, not with guilt, but with irritation. Then he chuckled low in his throat, a sound meant to disarm or provoke. You've got no case, he said, smiling. But something had shifted in the room. The smile was slower now, his shoulders were tighter, and that necklace, still sitting on the table, said more than he ever would. The break. By 3:12 a.m., the air in the interrogation room had changed. Not colder, not louder, just heavier. This is where most suspects begin to sweat, to pace, to lash out, but Eli Warren didn't move. He sat perfectly still, staring at the necklace on the table, the one he had already denied. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the fluorescent light overhead. It buzzed like a heartbeat just beneath the skin. Detective Harper didn't say much anymore. She knew better. By now, Eli wasn't fighting her. He was fighting the silence inside his own head. And so she spoke one last time. Softly. Gently, like she was speaking to a child who just learned the world doesn't owe them kindness. When Monica told you she wasn't afraid of you anymore, Harper said, what did that feel like? There was no accusation in her voice, no force, just that one slow sentence, and the silence that followed. Eli didn't speak at first. He blinked, once, then stared straight ahead, not at Harper, not at the necklace, but at something deeper, something only he could see. And when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Like I didn't fucking exist. That was it. Not a confession, not a breakdown. Just the raw truth, the one Eli had never said aloud, even to himself. Because to men like Eli, being invisible is worse than being hated. Control isn't just about dominance, it's about being seen. And when Monica stopped fearing him, she took that away. That night, Eli didn't plan a murder. He executed a correction, a reassertion of power. In his twisted logic, Monica hadn't died. She had been erased. Courtroom testimony and sentencing day. The courtroom was full, but silent. Monica Reyes's photograph stood near the bench, framed in soft silver, the kind you might use for a graduation or a wedding, not a funeral. Eli Warren sat in the defendant's chair. His suit was clean, his expression unreadable. There were no outbursts, no emotion, just the same stillness that followed him everywhere. When the judge asked if anyone wished to speak on the victim's behalf, one woman stood, Monica's mother, Carmen Reyes. 58 years old, a retired teacher with tired hands and a voice that shook as she unfolded the letter in her hand. She didn't look at Eli. She looked at the jury, then up toward the ceiling, and she read. "She loved you, Eli," the letter began. "She believed in you, even when she shouldn't have. Even when we warned her, even when it hurt." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "You didn't just take her life, you tried to erase her voice, but we're still here. Her students are here, her friends, her sister." A pause. Then, stronger, with conviction. "You can't silence the truth, not with threats, not with pain, not even with death." The courtroom remained quiet. No gasps, no sobbing. Just the low hum of justice turning slowly in the background. When the letter ended, the judge leaned forward. His voice was clear, direct, and final. "Eli Warren," he said, "you are hereby sentenced to 40 years in state prison for the murder of Monica Reyes." Eli didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't cry. His silence wasn't strength. It was absence, like the part of him capable of remorse had long since been buried under denial, control, and silence. And yet, even in that silence, the truth had been heard. The holding cell was smaller than the interrogation room. No window, no clock. Just a bench, a toilet, and 4 cinder block walls painted in a color meant to calm violent men. Eli Warren sat in the far corner, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it was moving beneath him. He hadn't asked for a lawyer. He hadn't said Monica's name. Not once. And yet, just minutes after the sentencing, as the guard opened the door, Eli finally spoke. His voice was soft, flat, not broken, just empty. "She shouldn't have left," he whispered to himself. No anger, no regret, just a man realizing the only person who ever believed in him had stopped. The guard didn't respond. He just stepped forward, hands resting on the cuffs at his belt. Firmly. "Let's go," the guard said. And then Eli stood up, looked ahead without expression, and said one more thing. Coldly, "She made me disappear first." That was how it ended. Not with justice fully served, not with healing, but with silence. Because that's what abuse often leaves behind. Not just bruises or broken timelines, but silence so deep it takes years for the truth to climb out of it. Monica Reyes was kind. She was hopeful. She was trying to rebuild a life from the pieces of someone else's damage. She didn't die because she was weak. She died because she found her strength, and he couldn't bear it. Final reflection, emotional and slow. In the study of criminal psychology, we often analyze patterns, cognitive dissonance, narcissistic traits, control addiction, but none of it explains the whole truth. Because sometimes, violence doesn't start with rage. It starts with silence, with charm, with a look that says, You owe me your fear. And the moment you stop giving it to them, that's the moment they become dangerous. Thoughtful. We always ask, questioning, why didn't she leave? Questioning, why didn't she speak up sooner? But rarely do we ask the right question. Serious. Why was he so afraid of her voice? Why does a man feel erased just because a woman says firmly, no more? Declarative. Eli Warren wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was the man in plain sight. Descriptive. The boyfriend with a good smile, a steady job, and a way of twisting love into something that looked like loyalty. Disgusted, but felt like prison. Determined. And Monica, she wasn't just a victim. She was a warning and a voice that refused to stay silent, even in death. Reflective. Some men destroy because they want control. Others destroy because they've already lost it. And when truth becomes louder than fear, emphatic, that's when we find out who they really are.
Share your thoughts below. Let's talk. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.